started with our next presentation. So if everyone could take their seats again. If everyone could take their seats, we're going to get started with our next presentation. And just a reminder for everyone that's watching on the live stream, anyone that makes a donation to our GoFundMe today, we have 3 books on raffle. We have Accordion Revolution, A People's History, donated by Bruce Triggs. We have a book donated by Helmy Harrington that is authored by Linda Griffith. And we have a book on... So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. William Popp. Oh, wait, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to turn things over to Helmy. You snuck up on me.
I just have to get my 2 sentences in every time. I want you to know that for a couple of years I've been trying to get hold of Dr. William Popp. He was educated by the Denver University of Denver in an accordion department, and your primary teacher was Robert Devine. That's right. Every so often, a word just kind of slips past and through my head. In any case, I have been trying for years to get him to come. He was such a kind man who sent me a CD of his music some years ago, and I responded gratefully and asked him, would he consider coming to play for us? And he said, well, he'd play for strolling entertainment or social, but he didn't want to do a program. This year, I got him to come not only for strolling entertainment, but also for an actual performance. And the best part is that he was so generous as to offer to give us music and CDs and whatever he's going to give us, which I'd say is really very generous. This is a man who has all kinds of credentials with the Air Force as an accordionist, and besides that, he's a very nice gentleman. I'm so glad to have met him and his wife this year, and I hope you'll consider coming again.
Okay, is this picking me up? Okay, well, it's nice to be here, and I'm glad that there are so many here. I would like to just go over these handouts a little bit that went out. Here's a composition list, and Helmy mentioned that I studied at the University of Denver. I have 2 performance degrees in concert accordion, bachelor's and master's, and then sometime later I entered the Catholic University of America to study composition. While I was at the University of Denver, I studied with Norman Lockwood, who wrote a wonderful piece for accordion, Sonata Fantasia. And after that, I decided to, after some years when I was in the Air Force, start studying composition again. And I contacted David Diamond up in New York, who teaches at the Juilliard School. And he and Norman Lockwood know each other, so I had a little bit of an in with David Diamond, and he got permission for me to go up to the Juilliard School and study with him privately. I spent 3 years studying with David Diamond, and I would take the Amtrak train, the commuter train from Washington, D.C. to New York to take the composition lessons. And I think in terms of theory and composition, that was the best decision I ever made in my life, because the gentleman is just incredibly knowledgeable and a very fine composer, and known very well as an orchestra composer. After that, I actually was contacted by Carmelo Pino, who is from Washington, D.C., and that's where the Air Force Band is, and he said there's an opportunity for you to study composition, to work on a doctorate at the Catholic University if you want to. And of course I thought, well, gee, I'm doing all this composition work, and I'm learning a lot, but I'm not getting a lot back in return, so why not get another degree? So I worked on my doctorate in composition at the Catholic University of America with a composer named Helmut Brownlick. The composition list. This, as you can see, My works for accordion are listed on the top, and I have recordings of me performing them, all of them, and then the additional compositions are listed below, and as you can see, I've written a lot more for other instrumental combinations and voice more than for the accordion. It was actually just a few years back, I thought, maybe 4 or 5 years back, if I am an accordionist, maybe I should write more for the accordion. So I started writing more for the accordion. So the Sonata No. 2, the Preludes, the Concerto for Accordion and Orchestra are all my newer works. Okay, so I brought CDs, as you know, and they're in the back and they are free. The one is all my own compositions that are for solo accordion, except for the Tactile No. 2, which was written after I made that, and then there's a collection of Baroque accordion works. What you heard a little bit of to test out the sound system was an arrangement that I wrote for the United States Air Force Strolling Strings. I played with that group for 20 years. And I wrote probably around 70 arrangements for string orchestra and accordion, and they are still playing those arrangements after 20 years. I'm happy to hear. I'm giving to the museum. I have only 2 copies left of these, and I never had more than a couple to begin with. My own personal copies now. This is of the Air Force Strolling Strings on Wings of Song. I discovered looking on the internet that it was picked up by a label, and it's probably 25 or 30 years old, but it can be purchased. If you check out Air Force Strolling Strings on Wings of Song, it'll come up, and you could also stream it. This one too, the last recording I made with the Air Force Band, Strolling Strings, called Collage. Again, you can find it on YouTube and maybe some other streaming services. YouTube on this one also. As far as my solo recordings, the Baroque CD recording and the compositions which are on Centaur, which is a classical label, they may be purchased or they may be streamed as well. You can stream them on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you want to go. So, but the CDs are back there. Please take 1 or 2 or 3. And if there's anybody you know that might be interested in concert accordion music, classical accordion music, let them know. They can stream it, or they can. You can take 1 and give it to them. Please do. Okay, so that's it with the recordings. I did put out a recording list, and some of them are on vinyl. I've noticed you can even find some of those on the internet. That's about it. The Takata, William Popp Live, and the Accordion Classic are on my own label, and they're back there. And some of those are on, some of the selections from those are on YouTube. Okay, so I thought, as far as my compositions go, the compositions for accordion, is Jane still here? Jane, where are you, Jane? All I hear is it's a ghost. You said this place was haunted at one time. Yeah. So from this, do you have this list of my compositions? I was talking to bringing Jane's name up because I sent her one of these discs quite a while ago, and she said she listened to it and enjoyed it, which I always like hearing that. Is there something on the list of my compositions? Somebody have a list? Is there something in there that you particularly liked or that you think the group might enjoy hearing? Oh, it's background music. I thought it was concert music. Huh? Yeah. pick one that you think might be interesting. Yeah. Okay, the Musica Piccola. Musica Piccola was written probably sometime in the 1970s. I don't know. It's on my music. Let's see what it says about Musica Piccola. That was written in 1976. It is a free bass composition, and almost all of them are. I only have a couple that aren't free bass, and it's a little suite, and it's probably the only one that is good for an intermediate student that is learning to play the accordion. Most of these are advanced for the advanced player. The liner notes say it's a little suite in 4 movements: prelude, musette, sarabande, and gigue. As the title suggests, the movements are short. This composition and Westgate are the only works on the album that are entirely tonal, and that is true. My music, there's a great deal of variety in what I write. Some of it is, these are entirely tonal. Some are entirely atonal. Sometimes I mix tonal and atonal, tonal, modal and atonal, etc. Whatever seems to be where the composition wants to go. Okay, so this is the Musica Piccola, and it's in 4 movements. All 4 movements are in 2-voice counterpoint, so it's entirely contrapuntal. The characteristics of the work are true to the Baroque period. The prelude introduces the work. The musette is a keyboard imitation of bagpipes. The sarabande is a slow Spanish dance in 3/4 time, and the gigue is a fast English-Irish dance in 6/8 time. And it's pretty short. So you hear the imitative counterpoint where the first voice comes in, and then the second one comes in and copies it. In the saraband, it's at the octave, and the G gets at the fifth. It comes in on a different pitch, which is common. Any comments on this piece? Yes. Well, I was always interested in it, and when I was learning to play the accordion at a fairly early age, I did attempt to write a few little pieces, and I didn't think they were very good, but I always did want to write music. When I was working on my bachelor's degree, another accordionist said he wanted to take some composition lessons with Norman Lockwood, but Lockwood said he'd only take a beginner composition to it if he had two of them. So he asked me to join him. I would have maybe never taken composition lessons because I didn't know that I didn't really think that maybe I would do well at it. But I went in and he really liked what I was writing, and so I continued, and that's how I got started with composition. So basically, I started at the age of 21 composing, but it was something I always really did want to do. My doctoral degree is in composition, yes. Right. So that's how that came about, you know. It was just fortunate for me. Yes?
I'd like to know your own opinion of the salient characteristics of your compositional style.
Yes. Okay, she wants to know the salient characteristics of my compositional style. I take that.
9 years in postgraduate studies on contemporary music and had real trouble making an emotional connection to most of the music. I have no trouble making emotional connection to your music. I like it from the onset. First listening and every repetition after that just adds depth. So I want to know how you consider your own music, and when you are writing it, what the criteria are.
Well, that's an exceptionally good question, and not necessarily easy to answer. Yes. How do I consider my own compositions? Well, first of all, I'd like to say what I learned from Norman Lockwood is that you let the music go where it wants to go. So if it's tending to be atonal, I let it be atonal. And like this piece, all of a sudden I got this idea that came to me, and it wasn't atonal. It was this simple melody. So I just continued with it. So that's basically how I work with it. So I would say that there's a great deal of variety. And what David Diamond said to me at one lesson, and this was very interesting because he would be working with the details of a composition, and all of a sudden something would occur to him. And he said, for a piece to survive, it needs to have melody and drama. Okay? So you have to have something that this stress and a release of stress to make it interesting, but it can't just be intense. It has to have melody and drama at the same time. So another thing he said to me is, because you see there are a lot of works here for orchestra that I've written, is that always take the advice of the performer, which is another great piece of advice. I know a lot of performers are hesitant to go to the composer and say, would you change this or would you change that? And he said, always take their advice. They know their instrument, right? And as a matter of fact, one of my orchestra pieces is going to be performed this month in New York City by the New York City Chamber Players Orchestra. It's called Horos to Kalamata, which is Greek, which means Dance of Kalamata. So it's a dance in 7/8 time. So it's going to be streamed. So if you look up that website of that orchestra, you might be able to check in on how it goes. But I bring that up because the clarinet player came to me. He looked at the score, and he's played with orchestras and in orchestras for decades. And he said to me, this one section here, this 8-measure phrase, the oboes can play that in that range, but it's very high. They'll be much happier, and in fact, I think you'll be more pleased with how it sounds if you lower it an octave. And I didn't argue with him. Oboes have to be hit there. I said, okay, I'll put it down, that kind of thing. I'm getting off the topic here, but that kind of thing happens when you're working with musicians that are orchestra players and composers that compose, high quality classical music. Okay, should we move on to? Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. I have another window.
Yes. Okay. Another question.
Do you do a lot of rewriting? In other words, do you have scratching?
That's a wonderful question, and I'm glad you brought it up because I wanted to mention that. When I write a piece, I work it out as I go along, every 6, 8, 10, 12 measure part of it until I get it exactly the way I want it. And when I finished, I'm usually happy with it. It's done. I don't rewrite. I like it the way it is. When I hear it played, I don't hear it any other way. There are 2 exceptions to that. The Westgate, the piece that I have there, that's the other tonal piece called Westgate. I first wrote it in the 70s, and sometime in the 80s I decided, the rhythms aren't quite right. It's very syncopated, and I just changed some of the rhythms quite a bit. So I did some rewriting then. Then I thought, again, another time later, that the second movement was not interesting enough. And that's because it didn't change keys. So I took the original theme, the A theme in the second movement, and at one point put it in minor. And that just fixed it. And now it's the way I like it. But that's only one of 2 pieces that I've done some revisions to. The other one is the first sonata. I did some revisions to the first movement. One was where the beginning opening was in 4-note chords that are all chromatic. And I was practicing it. I played it when I was younger, but I was practicing it to record it for this recording. And I thought, man, this is going to take me months to learn this. It's so hard. So I changed it. I said, but wait a minute, I'm the composer. I can change it. So I made them 3-note chords in the right hand, and that fixed that. It didn't take me but some weeks to learn it. So, and also there was sections that sometimes I use a Stradella bass, and sometimes I use, and all the revisions were just in the first movement. Sometimes I use free bass, and the free bass just didn't have enough presence. It didn't balance what was happening in the right hand. So I rewrote those passages from that theme in the left hand for Stradella. So I made those changes. So the only 2 works that I've ever revised. Thank you for that question. Yes.
Wait, one second.
When you were in the Air Force Strolling Strings, did the AT group play any of your compositions?
Pardon me?
When you were in the Air Force Strolling Strings, did that group play any of your compositions?
Yes. Of course, they played almost all of my arrangements, and like I said, and they still are. But yes, that was the wonderful thing about being there, is that I could get my compositions played. So I wrote a concerto for accordion and string orchestra, and in 2002, which was about a year after I wrote it, that I played it with the Air Force String Orchestra at the Shenandoah Conservatory of Music, which is in Winchester, Virginia. Nice location for our conservatory rather than downtown in a big city. Okay. So, I'm not playing much music, and I thought that's what we would be doing. Is there something else that might be interesting to, another question? The Westgate. Okay, the Westgate is another of the tonal pieces, so it'll be easy to listen to. By the way, if you want a copy of Musica Piccola, the music is all up here. Please, when I'm done, come up and get a copy, okay? Or any of the others, take as much of this music as you would like, okay? And Dee, are you here? Hi. You mentioned you now have a violinist you might be playing with?
Yeah, I have access to a string quartet now.
Oh, great. And there's also a piece for violin and accordion, Musica Piccola, Partita Contrasta is for violin and accordion. And that piece has been played more than any of my other works. And it's an early work from the 1970s. I played that. I actually was fortunate to play that on a concert at the Kennedy Center. Let me see. We're looking for, which one is it? Westgate. Okay. Now I don't know if you know some of in my computer. I don't know if some of you know Manny Bovenreef. He retired recently from accordionist with the Army strings, strolling strings. There are only 2 accordionists in the military, one in the Air Force and one in the Army. I sent him a copy of this, and Westgate was his favorite piece on the recording. So here we go. Another interesting thing is when I was writing this the first time, I wasn't thinking of any program at all. And when I was trying to think of the name of it, I thought, well, it sounds country-ish and Americana, so I'll call it Country Sketches. It wasn't until the third time around that I thought, you know what, it really sounds like it's from out west, you know. So in my recording, there's a detailed description of now what I think the general program of the piece is. You know, the first movement is called on Viewing the Plains, and the second movement is called Roundup, which of course means where they're rounding the cattle up to send it off to market. I would like to, because my time is almost up, I would have liked to maybe play the concerto. I have 10 recordings of the concertos and things like that, but I don't know where they are right now, but I'll find them and put them back there. They're just in sleeves. And Helmy, I have 2 of these left from the Strolling Strings. They're for you to put in the museum. Okay?
Thank you very much.
I would like to finish with one more piece, the Takata. The Takata that I wrote was in 1973. It's the only one on this recording that was not recorded in my own studio. It's from a live performance that I did in 1974. It's 5 minutes and 43 seconds long. It's a technical piece. That, along with my second sonata and the concerto for accordion and string orchestra, are the 3 most difficult pieces I've written. Probably this Takata is the most difficult. So I'd like to play that for you. It is entirely atonal. There's a lot of counterpoint, a lot of imitation, a lot of imitative devices like inversion and things like that happening. So here's an entirely atonal piece that is contrapuntal. It's the Takata. I'd just like to say one more thing about the Takata. In 1995, it won a National Composition Award, the Lee Edelson Composers Award. It's just one award giving out every year, and that group has been giving an award for chamber music pieces only for many, many decades now. I don't know. That's thank you so much for being so receptive, and thank you for the suggestions and the wonderful questions. There's copies of all this music, and we'll put it back with my CDs, and you can take whatever you like.
Thank you, Dr. Popp. We are going to get the stage set up for the Accordion Concertina Music and Friends Band, which will be forming here in just a few minutes. We have, again, I'll remind everyone, I'm getting a little monotonous, but I'm going to do it again. We have the GoFundMe link is up on your screen. That this whole operation runs on donations, and so we would appreciate your support. So please check out the GoFundMe link that's up on your screen. Thank you.